And coming back home, the saga continues between Mamelodi Sundows and their dribbling wizard, Keagan Dolly. It is alleged that the two European teams are after the services of the 22-year-old Amajita Captain, but Mamelodi Sundows won't release him. To talk to us about the alleged contractual dispute at Kluwerkop, we are joined in the studio by player agent Tim Sukazi, who represents various top-class ABSA Premiership players. He also joins us. And we are also joined by SABC sports journalist Veli Lembuli, who has been leading the story for the SABC. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to AM News.
Thanks, Marumo.
Thanks, man. Let's start with you, Vej. How did we get here with Sundowns and Dolly?
Well, as you know, Dolly was bought from Ajax Cape Town by Sundowns in 2014. In fact, he had been transferred from Ajax, in fact, from Sundowns to Ajax as a junior in 2011. So at that time, he was loaned back immediately to Ajax the same month, July 2014. And at that time, there was this bar clause that had been agreed on between the two parties, the agency and also the club, Sundowns, £1.5 million. After it is alleged by the agency that they had demanded a different figure, which was 750,000 euros, but now it moves to different amount and different currency. And okay, there would then be a movement the following season. The player has to go back to Sundowns and start to play for Sundowns. And according to the club, they were requested by the PSL to change the date because now the player is no longer an Ajax player on loan, is a Sundowns player. In that process of changing the date, there's an alleged mix-up that happened, and it even changed the contract, especially there's a clause there, 8.2, in terms of the terms. So now, last year, that is 2016, there's an offer coming from Olympiacos, a Greek giants, and this offer is 750,000 euros because they know the buyout clause of Dolly to be 733.33 thousands in terms of that buyout clause. That's when now Sundowns were alarmed to this. Said no, this is not the buyout clause. The buyout clause is 1.5 million pounds. So then there was a problem there, and Sundowns ended up taking Dolly and his agency to the DRC, where they won that case of rectification. Fortunately, the legal eagle is here to take over.
That's where I was taking it. Tim, if you were just to come in there, what does it mean now? The fact that the DRC voted in favor of Sundowns and yet the player is unhappy. The whole issue of contractual dispute. Share with us there, because of course that's where you play.
Yeah, look, it sounds like Sundowns is an administrative house in shambles, really, to be honest. What has happened is unheard of. It's quite bizarre, but it's unfortunate at the same time, you know. So what it would mean is that right now, now that they've got a decision in their favor, Dolly needs to find a club that will meet the buyout clause, unless, of course, Dolly appeals the decision. You know, if it does, still, the buyout clause currently ruled in favor by the DRC would apply, would be in place pending the appeal. So that's what it means. And yeah, I mean, as to the player, it's one of those unfortunate situations, really, because he wants to go overseas. And my simple take is that, you know, at Sundowns, they should rather release the player.
But it's not for the first time, Tim, where you find Sundowns in contractual dispute with players. I mean, the latest one being Bibo going to Portugal, and also the issue of Torrealba. Why is there always that whole issue? I mean, even locally, when you have a player on loan from Sundowns, when you played against them, you can't feel that player to play against them. They had to change that law not so long ago. But why is that the issue, though?
Look, you know, I'm short of saying the Sundowns for you, you know. So they're a club that really operate in their own special way. And unfortunately, you know, they have been found out in one or two occasions. We know the Torrealba saga. And we know what happened in the past with many other players. You know, it's one of those unfortunate situations, but that's Sundowns. And I wouldn't comment any further. You know, that's how they do things, and maybe it's time they change their ways at the moment.
Velile, let's go back to you. You are a journalist on the ground at any given point. And of course, I've already alluded to the issue of Sundowns and players, and they forever at loggerheads when they have to release them, or especially when the players are doing well. But what does this mean now that there are these European giants that are interested in this youngster in South Africa? What does it mean for the relationship going forward between the European giants and the South African football when it comes to nurturing talent or even taking talent abroad?
Fortunately, we've got Tim here, and he will agree that South African teams, South African players, they struggle to attract good offers, especially from clubs which are in a top league, which I consider to be in a top 5 league, like the French league in Montpellier, and also a team that is also regulars in the UEFA Champions League, like Olympiacos as well. So, you know, you always hope that there will be this player that will be moving in this window. And for, you know, in the midst of all this, Sundowns calling a press conference and then this well-publicized problem, you still have offers. Last week we had Olympiacos bidding from 750,000, upping that to 1 million euros. In the same week, Montpellier came back. A day after the press conference of Sundowns, 1.5 million euros. Now the latest is that they've meshed the buyout clause of 1.5 million pounds, because they've came back with 1.7 million euros. But the only difference is that it's not coming in a lump sum, their offer that Sundowns is requiring, because I think they have a 12-month period. The latest I heard was that Olympiacos is going to try to beat that offer by at least making sure that they pay that within
Let's
the
just also
time.
get clarity on the monetary value of this buyout clause. Are these buyout clause put down on rents or in foreign currencies? Because now it moves from pounds to euros to dollars and then rents. So when this buyout clause are signed, are they signed on your South African currency, or are they signed on you, depending on which team is interested in you?
I will take that too.
No, it can be anything, really. So in the local front, maybe if the agent envisages a situation where his player will remain locally, you'd have it in rands. It's up to you. But it is always safe for all concerned to have it in European currency, you know, be it a euro or even in US dollars. So there is no rule or law. So it can be anything, it can be any currency.
But let's look at the decision, the outcome, the kind of precedence it set going forward. What kind of a precedent would you say it set?
Look, it's unfortunate. I hope this thing can be resolved favorably, to be honest. We're talking here about Sundowns. I think there's been good light on them in the past few months. They've done well continentally, and they've represented the country in our league. You know, they've put us in the African football map. So now, they don't need this. In my honest opinion, they should rather let Dolly go for what it's worth. And fortunately, I think the president of Sundowns he had a press conference to say he can release Dolly for 5 rands. And, you know, I would challenge him to say release Dolly for that 5 rand. You know, but then we all know that he said, he went as far as saying that it's not up to him, but it's up to the board. And let's be honest, come on. In a family business, more especially a personal business such as a football club, there's not one board member who could cast a vote against the wishes of a chairman. You know, the chairman controls the board. And more so in football, in a football club scenario, these boards are not as formal. You know, the man at the helm, he calls the shot. So in my honest opinion, Patrice is the man who could release Dolly. It's not up to the board. That cannot be true. And like he said, he should release him for 5 rand. Let's see what happens.
And of course, now let's also welcome Calvin Sosibo. He's a former Kaizer Chiefs and Bidvest Vets and MKE Akarankujo in Turkey. I hope I pronounced that name quite well, my man. Yes. Good morning and welcome to AM News.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Break it down for a player who, of course, in South Africa, any other player would want to go and ply their trade abroad. And here's this talented 23-year-old boy with big international teams interested in him, and yet his club says, no, not now, you're not ready. Even his coach went as far as saying he needs a season in South Africa before he can go. What your views would be on that?
Well, I think it's fair enough for him to let Keagan go and go for greener pastures. It will be good for the boy's growth, and it will take this to another level. Well, in terms of the age, I think it's a good standard for him to actually to develop while he's venturing onto this.
Now, look, let's talk about that relationship now. Here's his mentor saying, I told him there's certain aspects of his game that he needs to work on. And I think if he was to spend a season with me, he'll leave here very ready, because European sides are not really interested in grooming players. What would you think the relationship rather would be like between the two now going forward?
Well, I think for now, on my view, I think Keagan is ready because he's been through the development ranks for quite a while. So he's not someone that is foreign into the modern football. So I think he'll apply himself very well. Within the intake of the coach as well, I understand how he feels. Maybe he still needs to use him more.
Tim, let's come to you. In most cases, these players are young, they're desperate to play their football, I mean their trade in the PSL. And what would you say contributes the most to this contractual dispute that we ended up having to witness come a time where a player needs to go somewhere else?
Yeah, it's very simple. Football clubs are for themselves, you know, and football club owners are shrewd in their nature. It's normal. Forget the fact that, you know, the player belongs to the club and all that. No, when the contract ends, you know, the club is for the club and the player is for himself. It is as simple as that. And in that situation, obviously, if things haven't been done properly, there shall always be a dispute, you know, contractually. Obviously, people will always want to go back and refer to a contract, and they'll find these kind of funny scenarios, you know. But what causes the disputes, more often than not, more particularly, you know, in a club like Sundowns, I should say, is simply because clubs are for the clubs. You know, they look after their own interests. And that's why players need representation. That's why players have got agents. That's why they've got managers and so forth. Why? Because they need to guard against the club taking advantage, you know, of the player.
Of course, we prepared some graphics here, gentlemen, of the likes of players that Dolly will be competing against should this deal come through. This is Seba from Olympiacos. Age 24, striker, left winger. Of course, he's left-footed, played 34 hours. Games 23, scored 7, assisted 6. Compared to Dolly Veja, do you see him standing a good chance against this guy should he move abroad to Olympiacos?
You know, firstly, you should understand the season and the year that Dolly has had. From Senegal under-23 championships, and from going there, also finishing the season with Sundowns, going to the Olympics, captaining South Africa there, and winning the African Champions League, also becoming the first player, I don't know how many years, from South Africa to be in the CAF 11. So now, in terms of, and also the Club World Cup recently in Japan last month. So in terms of the scouting network of the two teams, they've satisfied themselves that this is the player that they need. And because if you look at these clubs, other players that will be competing with, age-wise, they are almost over the hill. So this is a player that is only 23 and a future prospect for them. So I think they've done their job. And talking to his father also this week, he's also satisfied because they've also been in touch with both clubs as well. And I view this situation as, I'm sure Tim can also add on this one. If Sundowns is worried about the money that this club is going to make, because these are two teams. Dolly will not even stay a season, in fact 2 seasons or 3 at these two clubs. Attach a sell-on clause.
Gentlemen, I wish we had more time to discuss this issue further, but I appreciate your time for coming through.